Can you all hear me? Am I on? Yes. Very warm welcome to all of you. My name is Dharmendra Kanani. I'm Chief Spokesperson and Chief Operating Officer at Friends of Europe, and have the pleasure to moderate this short but sweet conversation with someone really important who's on his way to Dubai, actually. You're going tonight, I take it, yes? Or are you going in the morning? Yes, soon. Not to get too personal, but I need to make it informal. We want to make sure that you're personable and able to engage with folk in the room, which I know that you are. It's a great pleasure to have the Commissioner who's responsible for the environment, oceans and fisheries, a really large and wide portfolio, almost covering all of our aspects of life in various ways. Someone who's been at the helm of a very controversial, at times, very demanding, and where everybody wants a piece of the pie. Everyone wants to know how things are going to operate, what will the Green Deal hold for us in the next 10 years? What's the unfinished business that we've got so far at the moment? And how are we going to deal with nature restoration and the controversy that's been there for the past 6 months or so around how the Parliament, the Council and others have vied to either, from your, depending on your perspective, water it down, mind the pun, or increase its value and its opportunity. But what we all do know is that everyone's been shouting from the treetops that this is the hottest year again, and we're going to get more of that. What we do know is, as a result of that, health is going to become a major issue as you get new, species morphing. You've read about the mosquitoes that are doing horrible things and are coming into the north of Europe and creating dengue fever as a result of the changing climate. And we know what's happening to plastics in water and oceans, etc. and so forth. So how do we make sure that the levers that are available to someone like yourself, and the Commission that can work with both member states but also local communities and make to actually seed change for the better. What we've had is far too much politics and very little action. But we do know is that this mandate has created one of the biggest ambitious programs that got onto the front page of The Economist in terms of saying this is where it should be heading. And then we've got Europe, America following and others. But has it stalled? Has it actually moved forward in the way that we would like to? So, Virginijus, thank you very much for joining us. I know you're very, very busy and you've got tons to do. But got a series of questions for you that relate to biodiversity. I want to talk about biodiversity. I want to talk about what you're going to say at COP and a range of other things. So my first question, this has kind of been generated through a lot of discussion, so I want to be careful in terms of paying faith to the people that are really interested in answering this question. We know that the nature restoration law will soon be formally adopted. What does this mean for biodiversity protection in Europe? And can we expect some type of resistance from the actions in the strategy? And is there risk of a political U-turn? Which is all very difficult, but meaningful.
Yes, so good afternoon to you all, and it's my pleasure to share this afternoon with you and share a couple thoughts with you. I always love these sort of conversations in more circle, but circle which is engaged, who knows the topics well. So let's try to use the best of the time. Now, I mean, with nature restoration law, I think we've did a huge work. It had its difficult part where basically the voting in the parliament was won by 6 votes, but we've managed since then, I think, to kind of get it from the stage which was, kind of totally emptied out to a legislation that absolutely makes sense and can make a difference on the ground. I'm happy that we've managed to engage, and I'm really thankful to Parliament, because what I was really afraid that Parliament is going to entrench themselves so early, because there is still quite some time of mandate to go, and we have lots of trialogues. So that would have run a huge risk. So despite the feeling that someone at that vote lost, someone won, there wasn't too much of emotion about it. We kept on working, and I really appreciate that. And that was I think a great approach for trialogues, where we try to engage with everyone, we try to have a constructive approach, and we got the other groups on board, additional MEPs on board. Now the vote in Envy committee has passed, so it's not a draw anymore. So we unlocked the deadlock, and now we await for a final vote, which is only in February. But I think there is, now there is not so much to change. It's finalized. The question will be now about the implementation. So member states, they will have 2 years to prepare the restoration plans. I don't expect the political U-turn there. I actually think that it's going to be one of those legislations where, there was so much fuse about it, but when the implementation will start, everyone will see very quickly that there is no harm, but only benefits in it, and national governments, I hope that they will, of course, instead of, gold plating, they will engage into, inviting stakeholders, farmers, fishers, foresters, but also civil society, scientists at the table, and making it a collective effort, because all of those groups, they definitely care about the state of the ecosystem. I'm happy that we unlocked it and managed not to keep it within the Natura 2000, because that would be a bit of a ridiculous legislation. Now it's going beyond, and the most important is that it's changing the way nature law has been perceived before, because it was all about protection, and protection in itself bears, of course, a lot of restriction for the economic actors, and therefore I think that's why it was a bit of all the time distrust when we were debating this legislation going further. Some, tried to create some methodology around it, but we've managed to overcome it. So I think this legislation gives an opportunity to show that it can be compatible with the economic activities, but of course it has to be balanced. So therefore, I think now we will be very interested to see what's next, and that means basically the final result of the member states' prepared plans.
Thank you for that. At the end of the day, it's all down to locality, isn't it? Because it's about how member states will actually put this in their framework of implementation and delivery, and ultimately that's where the action has to take place. But let's move on to that in a moment or two. COP28, you're going to be going there.
Yep.
We know that some of the work that's being done here in the EU, some of the kind of frameworks that you've put into place on addressing climate change and taking climate action, especially in relation to some of your portfolios in biodiversity and the ecosystem around the biodiversity. Do you feel that there'll be traction for this agenda, which has had very little attention, if you like, as a major policy concern, but also a threat to our climate? And so, what kind of approach are you hoping to take, and what kind of, I suppose, visibility do you think you'll get around this agenda?
Yeah, thank you very much. I think it's always a good question, and there is like these two schools of thought. So one which is saying that you have different Rio conventions and keep them separate, and have climate agenda, then you have biodiversity, and let's try to keep them separated. And the others, like me as well, saying that they have to be linked one to another, and one cannot ignore the other. So I was very, very thankful to Egyptian minister. She managed to push it through to make sure that biodiversity is featured finally at the UNFCCC COP on climate, because even if we reach, if we fully decarbonize our economy by 2050, but ecosystems continue to degrade and they collapse, we are busted. We're probably in even worse situation than we are actually now, and that's very often is a missing part of the picture. I feel that there is a lot of discussion about technology, innovation. Some of that technology is not even existing at this moment. I mean, it's absolutely fine. I always also love to discuss about innovation, but we have to look at the reality. And with the continuous degradation of the ecosystem, none of the technologies will be able to replace soils, oceans, forests, and etc. So, therefore, there has to be a balanced approach on those. I'm happy what we've managed to reach in Kunming, Montreal, and this will be the key topic probably of going into COP16. So where we are with what we have achieved at COP15, funding, basically countries coming with their strategies or action plans to COP16 so we can address the global gap and so on, and how that can be featured within the climate COP and can be better understood. So I think it has an important role to play. This COP seems to have all pieces in agenda. It has also Oceans Day, which is very important. So basically all pieces are there. It will give us an opportunity to discuss, and I think hopefully bring people closer on both of the agendas. Very often it's actually the same people engaging in both of the matters, but somehow biodiversity is somewhere on the side of the agenda, so it shouldn't be this way. So I very much look forward. Seems like that COP started actually well, with the agreement, the loss and damage. They really managed to, let's say, unblock the one of the major obstacles in order to proceed with the further discussion. So I hope that it also will reflect further on within that, but. Of course, I'm pretty sure it will be, as always, until the very last night, and
exactly.
some people will have to...
Indeed. Who are you looking for as allies on the biodiversity? You said the Egyptian minister agreed and said great, but because when you think about, and I'm glad you mentioned loss and damage, because you can see that where biodiversity loss matters are in places where are suffering the most climate damage, but least contributors to carbon emissions. So you have a community, a global community that feels very, very hard done by, yet it matters that they are supported to maintain the global ecosystem, if you like, the biodiversity system. So who are your allies in this conversation?
The interesting thing, so, you have those obvious allies, like, sort of largest economies, but you really have a completely different engagement and approach from China on biodiversity agenda. They are absolutely different than in climate. They are much more engaging, and they've been actually, instrumental behind as a presidency behind the Kunming Montreal. I think it has to do with a broader things and the philosophy and the history of the country. But so on environmental policies, they've been one of the firm allies, to be honest, as regards the biodiversity protection. Then you have much more difficult, those kind of agricultural countries who feel that there is like sort of intervention into their agricultural practices, especially those who are engaged in deforestation. These probably are the most difficult ones, and here I think we also need, at the end of the day, the system that sort of helps to ensure that we can protect those mega diverse places around the world, especially those 3 basins.
Exactly, which are key. So we wish you well, and hopefully creating a community of the willing and aligned to move the agenda. Because as you say, even if we do cut emissions, if we destroy our ecosystem, we're buggered anyway. In the context of allies and alignments, can you say a little bit about the role you think the private sector should play? And I'll give you just a context. We have a Global Europe Summit, which we held just less than 10 days ago or so, where we had a number of players there who said that from the private sector, who feel that they are brought in too late at last minute, but also with a very clear agenda of suspiciousness and thinking that they need to be penalised. And actually, there could be a different type of story and relationship. And in our those of you who are interested in our renewed social contract paper, please do read it or pick one up on your way out. We say very clearly that the private sector should be a shareholder in creating a better society. Now, not all of them are good guys, mostly guys. We know that. But there's a community out there who are of a different generation. They're not in their, this is not an ageist comment, by the way, they're not in their 80s who've come through a different life. These are people who are in their 40s and 50s with a different mindset and sense of responsibility. Tell us, what do you think the role of the private sector should be on this agenda?
So private sector's role is absolutely critical, and I think, you know, I don't want to say that it's to be honest generational thing. Very often, as I was a minister of economy, very often you meet in private sector a mindset which is willing to change because they see that's the only way of you know, not failing in the future for them. And I think that's the key. You can have many arguments thrown in the middle of the table, but the crucial one is ensuring that your business is thriving in the future, it's growing, that you are creating. And to do so, I think, you know, decarbonization, clean tech, and other parts of climate, of the biodiversity agenda, they will be playing a crucial role with the ETS system, with the carbon pricing, and etc. So private sector role, for example, in the nature restoration law was also critical. You know, when we met some of very ridiculous accusations, which looked more of a, you know, meme type of accusations rather than serious arguments, private sector actually, you know, they kind of engage in replying very clearly what would this law would really mean. Would it prevent, you know, their growth, development of the projects, or on contrary, they would benefit from that. So in many cases, private sector can play a crucial role on which side they are engaging. And what is very important, I think, is to ensure that they also clear with the vision that very often politicians have, where is our destination, where we are heading, and you know, so what role they are going to play. And I can understand that some of the businesses, they struggle to see their role because they have kind of, you know, used to a bit of a different culture, different way of doing things, and you know, and now with suddenly huge change coming up, they struggle to find their place. But I think that's the most important at the end of the day, that they see basically what's in it for them in the future. But without private sector, Green Deal is not possible. Private sector, you can call it private sector or in any other way, but at the end of the day, it's people. You know, it employs massive amounts of people who are the drivers of the change.
On that note of private sector, so I get you. So it's about, you know, what do you see in it for yourself to enable change to happen, which is absolutely the case in the private sector to a great extent. But whilst we're on the subject of the private sector, let's go to fisheries and ocean governance, because, you know, you and the EU, in the shape of the EU, have pushed this agenda. We had such awful discussions at the UN, we know that, and it was like, it was really dismaying to see, you know, hear that whilst everyone was saying, yeah, let's do something about, you know, the seas and oceans, when it turned to your own backyard, most people disagreed. They didn't want to have an agreement across the board. Now we've had a movement, but in the main, this issue of maintaining our life below the water as a sustainable goal is absolutely critical. We just touched upon it, biodiversity, etc. But we do know when it comes to the private sector and fisheries are highly political. Fishing is highly political. It's really difficult to commandeer a global community to say, you know, thou shalt fish only about this much and in this way, etc. And there's not much we can do other than tracking devices which are being placed as well. But what do you see as the priorities, now that there's something in place? So at least we've got a global framework, we've got a framework in place. What do you see as the priorities that you want to focus on the kind of fisheries and ocean governance, given what you said about the private sector just now?
Yeah, so I think, we always discussing green agenda in a bit of a mood like the weather today. It wasn't that bad, actually. We had a great 4 years.
You have. No one's denying that. I'm just saying you've got a challenging portfolio, that's all.
But the challenges, there is still plenty of challenges ahead, but I think we can use this opportunity to celebrate some of the small victories. So, for example, the BBNJ agreement was a remarkable one after 20 years of negotiations. Also, we probably not as much as we expected as regards the WTO or as we wanted, but we formed a very ambitious mandate talking about the harmful subsidies, but we still managed to put the foot in the door at the WTO. And now on those harmful subsidies disputes, WTO would be basically fully engaged. So there has been a significant achievement. Again, I return to COP15, but also on the local agenda. We finalized our important legislation on the changes as regards the tracking system and etc. So, SDG 14, life below water, we've been always committed. And true that on one hand, fisheries is something like, the easiest to see, the easiest to spot. And therefore, we spend a lot of time discussing it, but we should also admit that there are other pressures. All of those pressures, they are coming from the shores. They are coming from the land. So first of all, I think it's extremely important if we're talking about life below water is talk about the pollution. And here we have significantly advanced our zero pollution agenda. I think significant achievement has been done how we've managed to successfully advance the discussion on global plastic agreement on stopping plastic pollution. That's another significant step. And then at the end of the day, BBNJ agreement. So what it gives us, of course, now we need to speed up the ratification, and I will use COP28 again to speed it up with the ratification. But basically, we cover the world's ocean with a clear rules instead of having engaged. Everyone has their EEZ, and then going beyond that economic zone, nobody really cares what happens. Yes. And this is the logic that I've met when I came to Commission, and I had to engage in some very difficult negotiations on one member state leaving EU. And
we know all about that. You can say it's Britain, it's the UK, yes. We saw the spat over the channel in the North Sea.
So, and there was this logic about certain fish being, having, certain citizenship and the other fish being EU fish. So BBNJ agreement gives us a solid base to reach that target. Now it's in our hands, is going to be to fill it in with the concrete actions.
Great. Can you just do us a favour tomorrow when you're talking about fisheries? Could you please say, fish don't have passports, please. They are global citizens of our ocean. I think it's a really powerful statement. And I take your point. The point, there's a couple, and we'll bring all of you in, I promise. And thanks to our live stream audience. I hope you're listening or watching with intent, and we can, if you've got questions, please put them on our hashtag. But the reality is, and this is something that you can't control at all directly, both as a politician and commissioner, is that consumption isn't staving off. We know that. The consumption curve is still going up. We are consuming our planet twice over, unfortunately. If you look at the rubbish bags everywhere in the streets across the world and the waste problem that we have, it's phenomenal. We also know that on the plastic side, we're not on track at all. I mean, okay, in pesticides, absolutely, and agreements being made, but where it really bites is plastics, for example, and you've got consumption, and the two are linked to a certain extent. Where am I going with this? I'm going with this in terms of elections next year. There's our major, let's say, opening up of people's right to choose who they want in seats and what they want them to pursue. What's your concern, and what's your message going to be in terms of the elections next year, from your vantage point?
I think it will give us a good opportunity to talk with people directly, to address them, to go out and engage with them and explain the rationale behind our policies. Because if you look through those 4 years, you know, the extreme right, especially movements, they have constantly attacked each and every policy. It's not only Green Deal. The COVID policy has been attacked. The response to Russian, war in Ukraine has been attacked, and we see that it's ongoing, and more and more being done about it, and the Green Deal as well, of course. So that will give us a good chance to engage with people, to explain. I am very proud to be part of this commission. I think we've managed, out of all of these crises, to find a way out. Starting with the COVID, I was very proud of that moment when each and every member state, despite of their size of the economies, received vaccine at the same time, and we started going out of the COVID, 27 member states together. This is a true European moment. We don't value those moments. I fully understand, you know, but this is a true European moment, especially for me personally, coming from small member state, which is just more than 30 years independent country. It shows how quickly we move to let's say, the role of the leading economies of the world, and that's a significant achievement that couldn't be done without the engagement of those other leading economies in the world. Same goes with the Russia's war in Ukraine. First of all, of course, I'm extremely proud how Europeans supported Ukrainians, opening their hearts, houses, donating large amounts of money, allowing people to stay, and etc. It's just another opportunity to remind everyone how huge is empathy, how it's united across Europe, and our response was the correct one, and we are, supporting Ukraine because, first of all, Ukraine is defending those universal values that connects us all. And when it comes to the European Green Deal, at the end of the day, Green Deal was, first of all, about protection of people. In its heart, it had the goal of protecting people. Then you can go, protecting this planet, protecting economies, and etc. But at its heart, it's about the protection of the future, of livable future for people. And I think, again, this is something many don't value. But when you fight the pollution at sources, when you are fighting hazardous chemicals, or were you fighting, as regards the ensuring that ecosystems, they can benefit us of, again, something that, if you look at the pure numbers, half of the world's GDP depends on. But if you ask people, they take it as a granted. So that's very normal as regards the psychology and behavior of people. But I think elections will give us a good opportunity to explain some of those decisions that we have made. At the end of the day, I think it will be a lot of about the competitiveness of Europe. It will be a lot about the implementation of the policies. So these elections, they will require, I think, some of the concrete answers on certain pressures that Europe is facing. Because without those concrete answers, then you have, populists, and they going with a very easy way,
Exactly.
They go with a very simple thing, saying that you cannot deliver what I can promise you. So, and that's always very difficult to fight. But as I said, I truly hope that traditional parties more to the center, despite center right, center left, they won't be engaging into legitimizing the far movements, because this is the dangerous game. This is a dangerous pond in which some politicians try to fish, and
Exactly.
then you unleash the processes which you cannot control. And when I mentioned the country that been negotiating in leaving the EU, this is the process. This is an example of what can happen.
Exactly, and you're absolutely right. I'm glad you're being that bold, because the reality is, and I'm conscious of time because I've got lots of people here who want to ask you questions. But I take your point. But at the end of the day, that feel-good factor of supporting Ukrainians is going to bite when Europe is next year will on record have the highest public debt it's ever had since its creation and before. But I'm not asking you to answer this question. I just think that that's a reality. It's a reality bites question. And what our experience shows of political movements is there's no one been bold enough in the left or the centre to stand up and say, I have my own ideology. They've only ever reacted and said, okay, you jump high, I'll jump higher if I have to in terms of immigration or whatever. But anyway, that's my view and our view. Colleagues, we have significant people in the room. All of you are, obviously. All of you are significant. But who wants to because he only has a little bit of time, and I want to make sure that you get a chance to ask him questions. Hands up first. Great. Gentleman here. Lady there. Gentleman here first.
Well, first,
please introduce yourself.
Yes, my name is Antoine Hoxa. I'm from Fertilizers Europe, representing fertilizer industry. First, thank you to Friends of Europe for organizing, and thanks to Commissioner for being here. As fertilizer industry, we are on a path to decarbonize production of fertilizers. It will take blood and tears, but we're embarking on it. The other big challenge we have is reducing emissions from the field, from agriculture, and reducing pollution in general. You have nitrates directive, but there the tool, what science tells us, is we have to increase nutrient use efficiency. And we were eager to see INMAP coming, and sort of is lost from the radar. Can you tell us a bit more?
So what do you want exactly? What would you like
What is I would like to see INMAP coming,
okay.
Becoming a reality. When will it come?
Fine. I'll take quite a few questions if you don't mind. Is that okay with you?
Yeah.
Great. Lady there. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Irene Fuca, Adwea, an Italian multi-utility covering waste, energy, and water. My question concerns the early warning report published by the European Commission last June, and the inclusion of waste-to-energy plants in the ETS by 2026. So what we know is that most member states are still far from reducing the waste that they send to landfills
Yes.
To at least 10% by 2035.
So get to your question, please.
Yeah. Has the Commission already begun to evaluate the inclusion of waste-to-energy plants? And will the study take into consideration the diversion effects of waste to landfills and third countries? Thank you.
Okay. Let's take these two very quickly, if I can ask you to be brief so I can take more questions.
Yeah, let me be brief. So on, fertilizer production, I think, at the end of the day, decarbonization is needed for you not only to achieve climate goals, but also to have a future. We know that, it's a chemical reaction which today is still difficult to imagine without gas. And we know where gas is coming from. And if you look at those regimes around the world, not all of them are very friendly ones, no? So I think that's an important one. So on nitrates directive, we are starting a evaluation of the nitrates directive. So I actually call on you and industry to also use this opportunity to present your argument, so that nitrates directive, which is I think around 32 years old, we could have a good look at it. Has it delivered? What impact it has on the ground, and how we can make it more future oriented. Now on the waste to energy, you know, it's more of a question to Commissioner Hoekstra, but I can tell you that we have started the evaluation indeed. What are the exact points of that evaluation I cannot specify, but indeed waste to energy is part of it.
Great, thank you very much. You had your hand up here. And, of course, private sector, but also, I believe we have a former commissioner in the room as well. Can I call you in? Because you can be freer as a result. Not to criticise, but you can say your mind. Because I'd really welcome it. I think it would be great to have that interaction. But that's 3 men, so can I just please urge some of the women to put your hands up as well? Great, excellent. All of you be brief. Introduce yourself.
Thank you for being here. Oliver Bazatza from MedTech Europe. We're looking forward to hopefully the soon finalization of the packaging and packaging waste regulation, because it replaces a directive that's nearly 30 years old. Can I ask how insistent will the Commission be on trialogue to finally have legislation in this space which is harmonized with minimal national deviations?
Are you, I mean, given where you've come from and what you know, are you hopeful of that?
I'm very hopeful of that.
Okay, all right. Here, and then I'll come to you.
Microsoft. So we've clearly been looking closely at the whole AI and sustainability piece, trying to make sure that AI has, as little impact as possible on the environment, but also focusing on the potential for AI for sustainability. So we've been working obviously on the whole gathering and monitoring of high quality data for ESG transparency, using AI in sorting at recycling facilities. And you mentioned innovation earlier. I just wonder what kind of role do you think technology, these digital technologies that were not there 4 years ago, could play in the new mandate? And is Europe ready to implement a strategic plan, a solid plan for a competitive space for this technology in the new mandate?
And innovation, obviously, surely. We need more innovation, investment in innovation, because if you think about the GDP percentage spend on R&D in Europe, collectively, I mean, in comparison to Japan or the US, we're crap. Some individuals might be okay, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. But I just thought innovation is key, especially what you were saying, that the technology we have to do something fantastic underwater with technology is phenomenal. Yourself there. Gentleman with glasses.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Thomas Richter from Solvay, Belgium Chemicals Company. We've obviously seen a huge amount of regulation. I don't want to talk about REACH. I think we always were an opponent that we wanted clarity sooner than later. We now see a lot of chemicals regulation in other pieces, creating a lot of uncertainty for us. So I would like to know, what is the Commission going to do now and also in the next term to create greater clarity, coherence for us, so that there is a clear business case so that we can invest in Europe and also be the backbone for the entire net zero industries that you're aiming to build with Endaya, with CRMA and everything else?
That's the Vice President of Solvay, by the way, so that's quite a strong statement to be listening to. Thank you for coming here and making that point. Can I just ask you, I mean, I know you haven't put your hand up, but I really would love to have your reflections before the Commissioner leaves. Introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, my name is Janis Potočnik. I'm one of the previous commissioners from one of the small countries which were in the middle. It was Malta, huh? So the 3 big countries which were given the environmental portfolio, which tells you something. Anyway, I'm here because I think you have done really a great job. And this is just from the appreciation point of view. But to be entirely frank with all the questions which I'm hearing, and it's impossible not to hear them. World Meteorological Organization is telling us that we are on 1.4 degrees Celsius. The highest subsidies for fossil fuels, according to International Monetary Fund, will in 2022. So, friends, when will we get serious? That's my question. Because this is hypocrisy par excellence. We will never reach 1.5. And if we will not start looking in the mirror and start asking also, not the question how we will clean the supply side, but also what can we do on the demand side. And when I talk about demand side, I don't talk only about consumer. I basically talk about all the incentives which are sent to consumers and producers, and how can we actually meet human needs by using less energy and by using less materials, it's a critical question. And we will, in International Resource Panel, which I'm currently on UN level, currently chairing, we will go entirely in that direction, because the only way it's talking about provisioning system meeting human needs, not talking about sectors, not talking about GDP, but talking about well-being and trying to once look into the mirror and see what we can on the high income part of the world really do. If we go only with the loss and damage and put the money there to buy that we can continue a lot with the business as usual, this is not the way to go. And we need to be serious. And the only thing which would be my critique is I haven't heard yet the word circular economy, but I'm pretty sure that it's coming. So no, I just want to say that it's really important that we are a bit more honest in everything what we are doing.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm glad I brought you in. You've arrested our attention with that opening statement. You really have. And that's what really, in terms of the multiplicity of things that are going on, there's that one point you make about the dilemma between fossil fuel investment and what the temperatures are telling us. And we just need to get a grip on that. But also, I think, how do you stop initiativitis? I mean, you said it, that people want to separate biodiversity from this and that and the other. To the ordinary man and woman and child, it's about climate, stupid. We need to make sure that we do something across the piece. So, over to you for your final words in response to these questions.
Yeah. So, starting with the packaging directive, I think we've put a very solid proposal on the table. From the reactions around the town, I see that it's been touching on many, but we kind of getting there. So the Parliament have their position formed, and now I hope that the December Council will have a general approach. So we'll be discussing with the Belgium presidency, but we will putting the trialogues, political and technical ones, to finalize it within the mandate of this Parliament. And I'm sure we can do it. How far-reaching is going to be ambition? That's a more difficult question, because, as I've said, many actors are trying to still negotiate things. But again, that's a very good example of what Janis said in his speech, what you've mentioned a few times, that at the end of the day, despite a great effort on recycling and member states really advancing it, we still have an increasing piles of packaging waste. So we need to deal, and we need to tap into additional options, because just to be naive and say that we will recycle our way out of it, it just falls. Now on digital, what role digital is going to play. So I think there is no Green Deal without the digital agenda. And if you look at the energy transition, basically, it's all powered. It's going to be all powered with the digital solutions in many ways, in helping people to harness the best of, but also in ensuring that it can function well. Cybersecurity solutions and etc. If you look at our files, so you have deforestation, where you will have to deal with the geolocation, with improved certification and etc. All that is going to be digital. All that will have to have a solutions that will ensure that it cannot be fortified and etc. Then if you look at the circular economy as a key initiative of that, is hopefully today we will finalize the negotiations on our eco-design. And product passport is going to be a key feature, so that's going to be purely digital one. Finally, batteries, which I'm very proud of the legislation that we have adopted. It's very much future looking, but again, without a digital solution, not only the legislation but batteries itself might not be up to the potential. So there is you're not going to be shy of work for sure. Now, when it comes to chemicals and the statements of uncertainty, I understand that uncertainty uncertainty might come with increased energy prices, and when the war has started, it especially put many chemicals company into a very difficult situation. But when it comes about certainty and understanding what is going to be done next, we have a strategy on chemicals which have outlined all the steps, and these steps we are taking, whether it's a CLP, which we will finalize hopefully next week as one and only trialogue, or it's one substance, one assessment, or again revision of REACH, which spent a lot of time engaging with the private sector, getting them on board, supporting it. But we decided at the end of the day not to trigger it, because we just saw that it's not enough time to finalize it, so we don't leave business in limbo in between two commissions, in between two parliaments. But it's going to be ready for next mandate, and I know that a lot of business actors, they also agree that REACH needs to be amended. We of course need to keep in picture the economic situation, how it's going to affect different actors, not only the major actors, but also small chemical companies, and this is what we're going to do. So I'll stop here. I think Janeš's question was not so much to me as to you all to reflect.
Well said. You're absolutely right.
Always said that it's so pity when we fight for certain funds of a few million, whether it's on biodiversity or on climate, and then you look at the harmful subsidies which takes us 8 steps back despite
Absolutely.
of those brutal fights. So there is a lot of potential in those harmful subsidies to address and to power up the change even quicker.
I hope you are able to have that voice at COP, and I hope that there are others that will raise their voice like you, sir, and others that actually cut to the chase and cut the crap and talk about what's really important. So I hope you're able to have luck in that regard. Thank you for saying what you've said, being with us. I've eaten more than I should have in time, but actually my clock here says it's 2 o'clock, so we have another 45 minutes with you. So, well, yours doesn't. Thank you very much. Good luck, and we wish you well for your endeavours in the coming weeks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Don't go. You stay. He's only him leaving. So, what I'd like to do, thank you very much. So what I want to do in the time that we've got left is just unpick a bit more this whole issue of the private sector, because you've heard from the commissioners, the former commissioner and others here, is that at the end of the day, there's a powerful lobby. We call it fossil fuels, and it's the private sector. Whether we like it or not. And what do we do? What do we do to shift the dial on this in a way that's meaningful rather than just warm words that happen with 70,000 people in another city? That'll happen in the next 6 months or a year. And COP is what I'm talking about. That actually, you don't get to the real heart of the issue here. And I've not heard it yet so far in the discussions. And there's constantly jousting taking place. So, Ornel, can I bring you in first, if I may, from the private sector perspective? Is like, what, introduce yourself again, just for the sake of people here, because you're a significant household name, and there's stuff you could be doing. What's your perspective on this whole, the role of the private sector on the climate agenda?
So, Ornella Gosomati from Microsoft. I think the main thing, at least from our perspective of where Microsoft stands in this space, is really about the potential to create markets for clean energy or markets for carbon removals. Microsoft has invested significantly in long terms and industrial carbon removals forms, and this is not only just a way to kind of get credits and claim credits for carbon removals, but by significantly unlocking significant investments, you are actually creating a market. So that's where, if you talk about the kind of role that the private sector can play, that's not only kind of committing to some of those, high-level sustainability goals, but actually putting the money behind it and creating a competitive market for some of those solutions.
Thank you for making that point, because people say, you know, you've got incentives not to behave badly, but actually what you need to say is that the green revolution, if you can call it that, will create trillions and trillions of profit, but also jobs, if we get it right. But we don't have that discussion or argument, unfortunately. So make markets out of greenness is what we need to think about. Can I bring you in as well, please? Anybody else who wants to contribute, please do so.
So just again, Thomas Richter from Solvay. I couldn't agree more. I think we need to focus much more on creating those green markets. We often have solutions actually already. We find that some of the customers don't yet quite want it, also because it's at times still significantly more expensive. In other areas, obviously, we're also, as a chemical industry, reliant on others to simply have access. So often we hear about, you know, green hydrogen here and there, but quite frankly, it's not really available. You can't get it, even if you wanted to right now. That is a reality too. On the other hand, I think in Europe, we also need to think about how to make it simpler to innovate in certain processes. Because it takes a very, very long time. Then you need to certify things, and then we're talking 10 years down the road. But obviously, we don't have 10 years. We just heard it, where we are already. So we need to also think about how to simplify certain things. And my comment really about regulatory complexity and also certainty to the Commissioner was not that we are against the rules. We fully support the chemical regulation that we have. But again, we need to know what we can still innovate and what will still be available in 10 years. So if we're now supposed to invest in green sustainable chemicals, we need to know that there will be a market in 10 years from now. And as it's currently going, that's not always the case.
Thank you very much. Any other comments or reactions to what you heard, or reactions to what the Commissioner said? Don't be shy. No? Everyone's looking down because they know that if you catch my eye, I'm going to pick on you. No? No? Go on. Go on. The mic is coming on, it's on its way.
So I'm Veronika Hanche-Franco. I'm from UNEP, UN Environment Program. A lot has been said already, but on business, I'm hearing that, and also hearing that business has to be part of the solutions. And when we negotiate different legal frameworks, like the INC on plastic pollution process going on, business sector is very important to contribute to see whether the solutions that are on the table are fit for purpose. What also I hear from the discussion here, that the regulatory framework is necessary. It needs to be predictable. I think that's what you are saying, that there needs to be a vision and clear provisions. But reacting on what the Commissioner said, the Green Deal is very much not only important for the European setting, but also for international objectives. And you mentioned oceans, biodiversity, but the climate, of course. But we very briefly touched on pollution, but it is a very connected problem to the climate and biodiversity crisis. And one of the points that I would like to make is that we have to talk about these crises together, because they are very much interlinked, and very much linked to also what Janez mentioned, and one of the biggest powerful tools is circular economy, how to tackle all these crises. So let's not forget, when we talk about biodiversity, let's not forget that we have to address pollution as well. And we do have the science. There were voices last few days about science. No, we do have the numbers. We have the data. We have reports from different organizations. But we need to work with the data. The policymakers, politicians have to reflect that in COP, but also many other international arenas, to really come with ambitious goals and visions, because we are not there yet. The gaps are widening, so we are not on the track at all. We are falling further behind, and we are now where we are. We do need to move fast. So I was repeating a bit. Well, no questions here, but
no, but it's great to hear from UNEPs that you're thinking that same thing, and it's important that UN agency also comes up and stands up and says this kind of thing. One more bite of the cherry for yourself.
Actually, just one sentence, which I would like to put in your hearts, according to work which was recently done by the Club of Rome, the Earth for All. One message is critical. So according to all the modeling, social tipping points will be reached before environmental tipping points.
Yes.
So if we do not deal simultaneously with social story, we can forget decarbonization, we can forget all the environmental things because they will simply not fly.
Absolutely.
And I think it's really critical that part of our debate becomes also that.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you again for arresting our attention, because you're quite right. It's good. It's not a good point to conclude on, but it's a very important point to conclude this debate on. Is that we've done a number of things. We've fragmented climate action to the degree that people argue between biodiversity or other elements of it. That's wrong. We hope that what we've put in this document, Renewed Social Contract, is that we need to treat it as one holistic thing. Otherwise, you're just going to get markets, lobbyists, and people seeing not the lack of connection. It is climate, stupid, as we keep on saying. We need to be thinking holistically about it. The second thing is we know we've got the technology, but we won't invest in it as much as we should. Because if we could create a drug, a vaccine, in the context of a global pandemic, within a record time and get it passed through and vaccinate a lot of the world, this isn't equally the same kind of crisis that we're facing. We just don't see it here. And unfortunately, human nature is such that it's only adversity that drives us to action. And we need to bottle adversity up so that we can use it more as an everyday function. And I think you're right. If those of you who live in communities and speak to people who have not a lot of money, they think a lot of this action that's been taken about cars, about what's happening on streets and what's happening to that is, being asked to adapt is too late, controlling their lives. And if politicians knew this before, why are you only doing it now? And that, I think, there's a reality factor of how people are understanding the actions that are happening now, because politicians have left it too late. So you're so right about the social tipping point. And if you think about, and I'll end on this point, the quiet march to the right, we have to take it seriously. When we think about what's recently happened in the elections across Europe, I think we would be foolish, especially the centre and the centre-left, to not treat seriously the quiet drum of march of the right. And let us not be bystanders again. And on that cheery note, thank you all very much for being with us. He was great, I thought, and was very responsive to a lot of the questions and issues. And you've been great too. Thank you for joining us. These wouldn't happen without you. So you're as important as he is, and I mean that genuinely. Thank you all very much, and see you all again. If you're interested in the Balkans, by the way, and enlargement, so you know that on the 13th of December, this current mandate will make probably one of the biggest announcements, or not, on the future scope and the purpose of Europe, whether it allows the whole of the Balkans in or not. To discuss that, be here on the 7th of December, where we've got a stellar cast list. We have got about 5 or 6 ministers of foreign affairs. We've got the architects of enlargement in the room. Stefan Full and Lajcek are already there. And we have a global star in the shape of Christopher Hill, who is famous for the Dayton Peace Agreement. So he's going to be here. So it's the 7th of December from here. We've got a breakfast thing that's invite only, but be here from 9:30 or 9 o'clock, and you'll catch this show, because this being opened up by the new Deputy Director General of Enlargement, that is Geert-Jan Koopman, who's going to deliver his big speech about the future of Europe and enlargement. So thank you all very much. Take care. Safe home.